Fantastic Four First Steps is finally in theaters, so today I'm taking a look at Johnny Storm in both flamed on and flamed off varieties. And don't worry, I promise I'm not going to spoil anything from the movie. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Starting with the packaging, and we have mostly the same box. The flamed on version says Human Torch, while the flamed off version just says Johnny Storm. We also get different key art on the sides, and from an artistic perspective I think it's cool that they have them standing back to back, especially when the key art has them both facing in the same direction. Another fun detail is how the superhero name is underneath Johnny's, whereas Johnny is underneath the code name. I've said it every time so far, but I really do love this key art, and there are certain aspects of the Human Torch design in particular that I can't wait to talk about in the next category. For now, if you're looking for Johnny in store, here's his UPC, but if you're looking for the Human Torch, here's his. For packaging, these two get 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and while they do share mostly the same body, that flaming head does make Human Torch a little bit taller than Johnny, with Johnny standing at 6 1/4 inches, or about 15 1/2 centimeters, and Human Torch standing at 6 5/8 inches, or they're about 16 1/2 centimeters. Between the two, the only sculpted differences are the heads, this fiery shoulder piece, the hands, these flaming forearm overlays, and the feet. In fact, if you look closely, he still has his little watch overlay. With each character having their own unique costume flourishes, Johnny's a completely new sculpt. I had thought maybe he and Reed would have had the same hands or feet, though to be honest, the feet actually might be the same. In general, I love the costume design, but it really lends itself to Johnny the best. That's because of all the ribbing running up and down the suit. In comics, inkers would use thatching to denote the shadowing from his flaming effects, and thanks to that ribbing, it's actually built into the design. What was really only a shading effect is actually part of the costume. It's a small detail, but really shows me just how much thought and love went into this. And for Hasbro's part, I'm really glad they did add a little bit of extra paint to accentuate it. I do think some brighter yellows in the flames would have helped, but it does still look pretty good. One thing I definitely like is the extra shading on the face. Switching over to Johnny, and this is a great likeness to Jack Lemmon. Okay, maybe that's a bit harsh. Honestly, the likeness to Joseph Quinn is fine, and as domestic companies go, I still think Hasbro has the best face printing in the industry. In general though, and I did feel he seemed a bit old for the character, but while this is primarily a discussion of the action figure and not the actor, I do like what he did with it. And on the subject of the Johnny version, being flamed down gives us a nice look at all that texture and detail, the tiny accents of black in the belt and gloves and boots. For presentation, Human Torch in both forms gets 5 points. If you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and give it a like. I mean like. Moving on to Poseability, and strictly speaking, their joints are the same, but there are a couple of minor differences in the range. From the top, and both heads are on ball joints and disc swivels, but Torch ironically can't look up as high as Johnny because of that fiery collar. Ironic because, well, he's the one that flies. Here they are looking straight, but as you can see, they look down the same amount. Little bit of tilt, but not a whole lot, and of course all the way around. Moving down, they can raise their arms over 90 degrees and get complete rotation at the shoulder. Once again, no butterfly joint or anything like that, but both have bicep swivel, pinless double jointed elbows with a perfect bend, but while both technically have swivel hinge wrists, the flame effects on the Torch version do get a bit in the way of up. Moving to the middle, and just like Reed and Thing, they have a diaphragm joint and a waist cut. They can arch back this far, which is decent, in combination with his neck, and here's a flying pose for Human Torch. Straight on, and I do wish he could look up a little bit more. Once again, and here they are standing straight, and unfortunately not much in the way of hunching forward. Johnny does, however, have a pretty good side-to-side tilt that helps with more realistic leans forward, and again they can spin at the waist. Below the belt, and both have ball-jointed hips. They can only kick this high, with a tiny amount backwards. Really good split though. And then working our way down, we have thigh cut, pinless double jointed knees with a deep bend, and while there's no boot cut, you can actually turn the flames around. Same with the forearms, but both have hinge, and like the role of Human Torch from Captain America to Eric Killmonger, back to Captain America, and now to Eddie Munson. Pivot. Docking him ever so slightly for the hunch forward, and for Poseability, I'm giving these two a still fantastic 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and in terms of accessories, neither one is what I'd call well packed. All the Human Torch comes with is an alternate pair of flying hands, though I suppose it's always possible that Hasbro considers these overlays to be extra accessories. Conversely, Johnny has alternate fists, along with these wraparound wrist effects that are pretty familiar to us by now. They do add a bit of extra pizzazz. That said, if you have both figures like I do, you can use the overlays and hands from him to create another really cool effect for even more variety, and you could even swap the heads. On the subject of head swaps, I'm sure a bunch of you would love to see how the new Johnny Storm would look with a Chris Evans head. Unfortunately, the peg hole is too small, so this is the best you're going to do without whipping out a Dremel. Also, and just a heads up, the flames on the flying hands actually just slide over, so just keep that in mind so you don't lose them. But playability is more than accessories, it's also about how well your figures play with others. Starting with a few other Human Torches from the tub, and here's one by Toy Biz, along with one by Hasbro, which does really look like it's glowing. Here's that same figure, at least partially flamed down. Appropriately enough, he's got hair like the Heat Miser. Next up, and here we have the Walgreens exclusive version, which I've always really liked for its glowing effect, but for some Johnny Storm love, and here's the flamed down retro card version. For those who are interested, here's how Joseph Quinn's head looks on that body. Not exactly the most realistic combination. I can't speak for Joseph Quinn, but I know I'd be pretty happy if I could head swap my way to a physique like this. Other way around, and for those who want to put the movie costumes into their comic display, here's what that combination looks like. Once again, there is a disconnect between the level of detail in the face and the level of detail in the body, but it is less noticeable this way, so if you really love these costumes, I think you could make it work. That said, I do have Marvel Select and the retro card new in box, so if you think you'd be interested in a multi-figure Human Torch Versus, let me know in the comments. For the other figures in the wave I've reviewed so far, and here we have Mr. Fantastic himself, Reed Richards, and the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing. Throwing back to the 2000s Toy Biz Fantastic Four, and here we have Chris Evans, including this Pipsqueak version from Rise of the Silver Surfer by Hasbro. Avengers Assemble! And then here's the Thing, played by Michael Chiklis, Invisible Woman, played by Jessica Alba, and Mr. Fantastic, played by Igloo Graboid, or however you say it. That said, we cannot ignore Dr. Doom, as played by Julian McMahon. Once again, rest in peace. Bringing us to a comic-style Dr. Doom as we wait to see how he'll be portrayed in Avengers Doomsday. Though for my money, the meetup I'd like to see most is Johnny and Spider-Man. This, of course, is a perfect segue to a relative scale comparison with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here he is with Dr. Doom, Stealth Iron Man. In terms of accessories, Johnny does get the better end of the deal. Some bigger or more interesting fire effects would have been appreciated, though I do like the swappability between the two. For playability, I'm giving them 4 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. At $24.99 a pop, I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth as much as I did with Ben or Reed, but they're both fun and striking, and the family is incomplete without them. For price, Johnny and the Human Torch get 4 points, averaging out to a final total of 4.4 out of 5. Agree? Disagree? Comment below and let me know what you think of these figures. And if you've seen the movie, sound off and let me know what you think about that. Out of consideration to others though, just keep it spoiler free. For my other Fantastic Four reviews, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice, have fun, and flame on!